September 18, 2025. Venezuela's defense minister stands on La Orchila Island as Su-30 fighters thunder overhead, carrying Kh-31 anti-ship missiles. The message was clear: come for us, and we'll sink your fleet. The Kh-31 is a Mach 3 monster. It skims the waves faster than most systems can track. Defense blogs went wild. Venezuela can threaten the carrier group. The Caribbean is a kill zone. 4 months later, January 3, 2026, 150 U.S. aircraft, F-22s, F-35s, B-1 Lancers, Delta Force helicopters flying 100 feet above the water. Venezuela's response? 0 Su-30 took off. Not one. Tyler Rogueway put it simply: the U.S. either had assurances they wouldn't fly, or they were destroyed on the ground. What happened to Latin America's most capable fighter? Let's rewind to what Venezuela wanted us to believe. September 2025. USS Gerald R. Ford sails into Caribbean waters. Caracas launches Sovereign Caribbean 200, their largest exercise in years. 2,500 personnel, 22 aircraft, 12 naval ships, and the star of the show, Su-30MK, 2 fighters armed with Kh-31 supersonic anti-ship missiles. Let me explain why this combination scared some analysts. The Kh-31 accelerates to Mach 3.5, over 4,000 kilometers per hour. It flies a sea-skimming profile at just 5 to 15 meters altitude. Against a carrier strike group, even a handful of these missiles could theoretically overwhelm point defenses. Venezuela was telling Washington, your carriers aren't safe here. In November, they doubled down. The Air Force released cockpit footage of F-16 and Su-30 flying in formation, 4 flankers, 4 fighting Falcons. It looked like a real Air Force preparing for real combat. The propaganda worked. Defense forums debated whether the Su-30 fleet could threaten the Ford. Analysts warned not to underestimate Venezuela. But here's what the cameras didn't show. Behind the propaganda was a fleet in free fall. Venezuela bought 24 Su-30 Mk-2 fighters from Russia in 2006 for over $1 billion. These weren't outdated jets. The flanker was cutting-edge technology. Twin engines with thrust vectoring, 12 hardpoints carrying nearly 8 tons of weapons, 1,500-kilometer combat radius, sophisticated avionics, and the ability to carry those Kh-31 missiles. On paper, it was the most capable fighter in Latin America. Nothing in the region came close, but Russia played a familiar game. When they sold Venezuela those 24 jets, they deliberately excluded maintenance contracts. No factory support, no guaranteed spare parts. Why? Because Moscow wanted Caracas to eventually upgrade to the Su-35, another billion-dollar sale. Keep the old jets broken enough that they'd have to buy new ones. That upgrade never happened. Venezuela's economy collapsed, and those flankers started falling apart. 2015, first crash, 1 pilot killed. 2019, second crash, another dead. 2023, third crash. Both pilots ejected. By 2020, only 11 of the original 24 were operational. The U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency estimated readiness at maybe 50%. By 2025, Latin American military aviation estimated only 7 to 13 Su-30s were even flyable. And flyable doesn't mean combat ready. The avionics were failing. Engines couldn't be serviced without factory support. Russia kept withholding spare parts over payment issues. The jets that were supposed to sink American carriers were held together by improvisation and hope. January 3rd, 2 a.m. local time. Operation Absolute Resolve begins. 150 American aircraft launched from 20 bases across the Western Hemisphere. F-35s from Puerto Rico, with stealth profiles invisible to radar. F-22 Raptors establishing air superiority. EEA, 18 Growlers flooding the spectrum with jamming. B-1 B Lancers dropping precision munitions. And the 160 Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers, flying helicopters at 100 feet above the waves, too low for radar to track. General Dan Kane described it. More than 150 aircraft launching in close coordination, all coming together for a single purpose: to get an interdiction force into downtown Caracas. Venezuelan air defenses collapsed in minutes. We covered that in the last video. But the Su-30s, the jets that were supposed to threaten the American fleet, never even tried. La Carlota Air Base, home to the flanker squadron, was hit early. Photos show destroyed anti-aircraft units, cratered runways. And here's the detail that tells you everything. According to reports, 4 F-16 and 2 Su-30 did eventually take off. Hours after Maduro was already captured and heading to New York on USS Iwo Jima. They flew when the operation was over, when there was nothing left to defend. Why? 3 possibilities, probably all true. First, the jets weren't ready. Years of deferred maintenance meant most couldn't start on short notice. Second, U.S. electronic warfare blinded them. Growlers can jam radar, communications, navigation, everything. Third, pilots chose not to engage. Flying a poorly maintained jet against F-22s isn't combat, it's suicide. This wasn't an isolated failure, it's a pattern. Russia sells impressive hardware. Russia doesn't sell sustainability. India bought over 270 Su-30 MKIS. They've complained for years about engine reliability and spare parts delays. Algeria bought Su-30 MKAS. Maintenance nightmares from day one. Malaysia bought Su-30 MKMS. Reports of readiness below 50%. The Su-30 is capable when it works. In Russian Air Force service with full factory support, it's a serious threat. But Russian exports create total dependency. You buy the jet, you're locked into Moscow for every turbine blade, every software update. When that support disappears, sanctions, payment disputes, or just Russian leverage, your billion-dollar fleet becomes a museum exhibit. Venezuela learned this publicly. Their flankers looked terrifying in September. In January, they were paperweights. Let's zoom out. September 2025. Defense analysts debated whether Venezuela's Su-30s could threaten a U.S. carrier. They wrote articles about the KH-31's Mach 3 speed, its ability to overwhelm ship defenses. January 2026, 150 American aircraft flew into Venezuelan airspace, extracted the president, and flew out without losing a single jet. 0 American casualties. 1 helicopter took minor damage and completed its mission. The Su-30s that were supposed to threaten the fleet never left the ground during the operation. This is deterrence theater meeting reality. You can show off missiles on islands. You can release cockpit videos. You can make defense bloggers nervous. But when the moment comes, when F-22s are overhead and growlers are frying your electronics, what matters is whether your jets can actually fly. Venezuela's couldn't. Russia got paid. Venezuela got propaganda photos. And on January 3rd, they got a lesson in what air power actually means. Venezuela's Air Force was never going to stop Operation Absolute Resolve. But 0 fighters scrambling during the attack tells you something important about Russian military exports. The hardware looks impressive. The specifications are real. The dependency is crippling. Next time a country shows off Russian fighters with anti-ship missiles, remember January 3rd. Propaganda doesn't fly combat missions. Subscribe for more breakdowns of what works and what doesn't in modern warfare.